Hello there, gentle people. I hope you are all doing well. If you notice, I have a bunch of stuff here and I wanted to do this video to help clear up some confusion as it relates to embroidery versus needle punching. So before I got started, I wanted to show you some different examples of both kinds. And I started doing embroidery when I was a little girl. I learned when I was about 5-6 years old from my mother and my grandmother, and I went to school in Jamaica. So as a girl, you are forced to learn how to sew and do embroidery. There's no getting around it. But anyway, these are some embroidery pieces that I've done, and you're also going to see some different examples of hoops as well. And this one, I actually got this one from an estate sale. If you notice, it's kind of different. You squeeze it, but anyway, some different versions of embroidery. So that's one piece there. This is another one with a different kind of hoop, and the fabric already had the design, the pattern on it, and then I just kind of embroidered on top of that. And then these are some samplers that I did with different kinds of stitches. And here's another one. So this is embroidery, right? And here is another one that I did. This one is actually a little self-portrait of me, and the embroidery, the wooden hoops don't come in colors, but what I did was I just painted this one black with some acrylic paint. All right, so that's embroidery. And bear with me, this video is going to be a little bit on the long side because you girl knows nothing about editing. But anyway, this is punch needle. This is one of the first punch needle pieces that I ever made. I'm actually turning this one into a bag. So if you notice, I have some leather straps here. And this is technically the wrong side in punch needle. This is actually the back, because punch needle is pretty much, it's a version of rug hooking, right? And with rug hooking, normally you're kind of going through the fabric and you're pulling up from the bottom, but with punch needle you're actually punching through the fabric. And I won't be able to show you on the back of this because it has lining, but let me just stick this to the side for now. This is another punch needle piece right here, and as you notice, the texture is lovely. On the back, this is technically the right side, because imagine if you were going to step on a rug, right? This is what you would expect the rug to look like. It's very textured, it's very cushy. This would feel so nice underneath your foot because it's technically a rug, right? And let me show you some more examples first. This is a piece that I started working on yesterday actually. What I do is I leave this little piece in the car, and when I have a lunch break and I get frustrated, I just go downstairs and punch. So again, this is the back, which a lot of people know in the contemporary version of rug hooking with a punch needle. They actually like this side and display this side because it looks more like embroidery. And then this, which is technically the right side, if you notice, you can see the loops, right? They're raised, and this is monk's cloth, which we'll get into a little bit later. I'm just going to show you a couple more examples of punch needle before we move on. This is one that my son was actually messing around with this one. So this is punch needle again. As you notice, the loops are here on the back. As a rug, this is where you would step. A lot of people like to display it on this side because it looks more like embroidery. And this is another piece that I've been working on, and what I did was incorporate both sides. So if you notice, the loops are on this side and then loops are on this side as well, but this part, which is technically the back, is going to be the front of this particular piece. And this is another piece here, and that's the back front, whatever you want to call it. And this is another one here with my girl Cardi B. So again, This is whichever side you want to do it, back or front, whatever makes you happy, right? It just depends on whichever side you prefer. Do you prefer the more textured side, or do you prefer the flat side that looks more like embroidery? All right, so those are some pieces. The deal with punch needle is that people get very confused over what kind of fabric to use. But before we get to the fabric, I'm going to show you some different needles. All right, and like I said, bear with me. I had a general idea for how this video was going to go, but I didn't have a solid plan, so I'm kind of just going. All right, so here's the deal. These are the punch needles that I first bought, and these I got at Walmart. You can actually get the punch needles on Amazon now. I ordered one on Amazon, and when it came, the tip of the needle was corrugated and messed up, one of those, you know, made in China junky pieces, and I had to return it because I couldn't get it to go through the fabric. But the reason why I ended up buying these needles from Walmart is I had been doing a lot of embroidery, like mid till late, like last year, and I was on Instagram and I was like, oh, you know, people are using this thing called a punch needle to make the embroidery process a lot quicker and a lot easier. Don't take that thing lightly. It's not, it is easier, but it's something that has like a learning curve, because if you don't know what you're doing with these punch needles, it can get very confusing. This one from Walmart is less than $10, and all three come in the package together, and they also come with this needle thing to thread it. The deal with this is I bought these needles over a year ago and could not figure out how to get them to work, and I'm watching all these videos on YouTube and I'm like, why these people make it look so easy? Like, I'm not stupid. I don't know why this is not working. Anyway, I'm going to explain how I ended up figuring that out. But again, these three needles come in a pack. You can get it at Walmart for less than $10, and this is the threader. It's a very long threader because it's actually a long needle. All right, so these needles will actually give you more of an embroidery look. You'll actually have the same effect with the loops on the back, but obviously it's much smaller. And now these are like rug hooking punch needles. I got two of my first ones from the Oxford Punch Needle Company, and this is something that Amy Oxford came up with. I have two different kinds here. I have the number 10, which is the one that most people start off with, and then I also have the number 14, which is a smaller one. So the number 14 gives you smaller stitches, obviously, and then the number 10 gives you bigger. But what I think the numbers, and the numbers are here. Wait, where? Okay, no, right here. See, this is a number 10. And this is the number 14. What the different numbers of the needles do is give you an indication of how big the loops are going to be on the back. And just to kind of give you, like I said, I'm doing this on the fly. Just to give you an example, if you notice these loops, they're very small. These loops were done with the number 14, the smaller one, and then the bigger loops we're done with the number 10. And obviously, as you can see, the number 14 is going to take a thinner yarn than the number 10. This is another punch needle that I purchased, and it was from Hole Punching, and it actually came from the UK. So if you notice, these punch needles have this groove in them, and the way you thread this needle, I'm gonna get this nice pink piece here. The way you thread this needle is by going through the top right here, and then you're gonna pull your yarn through. Boom, that's it. It's pretty much done, right? This is the number 10. With the number 14, it has a little loop at the end. So what that does is prevent your yarn from pulling out. And it does happen a lot when you're actually working, but it's an easy fix once you actually get into punching. And I'll show you that a little bit later. So see, pretty much that's the way you thread the punch needle. Easy peasy. These are the Amy Oxford punch needles. They're super easy to work with and I absolutely love them. At some point, I want the whole set. Like she has a whole set where you can get all the different kinds. So that's the punch needle. When you buy these punch needles from Amy Oxford, you can buy it just individually by itself. Or if you pay a little bit extra, she actually sends you a handbook with a lot of information in there and also this little stitch guide. So it just depends. If you don't need the handbook and the stitch guide, it works out to be a couple dollars less. But again, number 10 and number 14. If you're going to start off, just go ahead and get the number 10, right? It's going to be easier to work with. So if you notice, the type of yarn that I put through the number 14 was the very small, thin yarn. With the number 10, with the number 10, I purchased these from Michael's. And what's cool with the number 10 is that you can put this through just this one strand by itself. Or if you wanted, you could even... if you wanted more texture, you could actually double up. And it's not just yarn. If you have strips of like wool fabric that kind of fit, you can actually run that through as well. There is a lady called Rose Perlman in New York that she's actually been putting strips of plastic bag through there and making pieces with that as well. So again, you can use one strand, or if you want some more texture, you can double up because that will work as well. All right, so those are the needles. Again, these I got from Walmart, and one that's really popular is one called Ultra Punch, which you can get on Amazon. If you're going to do this punch needle thing, just go with the Ultra Punch or get these from Walmart, because there's like a blue and white one that you'll see on Amazon, but I haven't had any luck with those at all. And if you're going to do your bigger yarn with your rug hooking, definitely, I absolutely love the Amy Oxford. Here's the deal with this one that came from England though, which the reason why I'm not digging it. Okay, first of all, I like these because what that enables you to do, which the Amy Oxford one doesn't have, is you can change the size of the hoop, the loop I should say, just by twisting, right? So depending on how far down you notch that needle, that's what's going to determine the size of your loop. But what I found when I was punching with this needle, and I don't know if I'm doing something wrong, I need to double check her videos, like it's super loose, right? So as I'm going through, like the needle is like shaking all over the place. I don't have that issue with the Oxford punch needle at all. It's very secure in there. So I don't know if I'm doing something wrong. I don't know if it's supposed to be like that, but I just don't like, you see that? This is how it is when you're punching, and I'm not digging that at all, but we'll see. The other thing that I thought about is, like, I think it comes all the way out. I literally thought about taking some polymer clay and just making like a handle for it and trying that. The other thing, oh, did I just completely jack this up? Oh, no, I didn't. The other thing that I've been thinking about is, I don't know, just having somebody make a wood handle that I can put on it, because I don't, I like to try different things just to kind of get an idea, but I definitely didn't like that shaky situation going on there at all. So again, if you want more of an embroidery style with smaller loops and you want to use just regular embroidery floss, go for the smaller needles, right? See? And if you want to work with yarn, you can go for these. And again, Amy Oxford, this is like the creme de la creme, right? These are the Rolls Royce of the punch needles, like the Bentleys of punch needles, all right? But if you go on Etsy or eBay, you can actually get a lot of different kinds, because punch needles have been around for over 100 years. So, all right, that's the needle situation. These are actually... oh wait, before I leave, these are actually threaders, right? So this threader here is for the smaller punch needle. So what happens is you push it through, you kind of pull the thread through. Here's the deal. Remember when I told you I could not get this punch needle to work? Do you know what I realized I was doing after like a year, literally a year of trying? And I'm like, I don't understand why this is not working. I had the embroidery floss going through the wrong direction. So I had the embroidery floss coming through here, and it really should be going through here. So the floss should be coming out at the back, and I had it coming through the front. So the loops were not sticking. So if you're trying with these needles and for some reason the loops are not holding in the fabric, double check to make sure that you have the floss or the yarn going in the right direction. Do not be silly like I was. And then this one that came from the UK, it came with this little wire and button punch, because that's how you pretty much thread it too. But like I said, I love the Amy Oxford ones because you don't need anything extra to thread them. But it just depends on your personal preference and what you're working with. So let me put the needles to the side and we'll talk about fabric. All right, so here we go. If you are doing embroidery, right, this is, I cannot remember the American name for it, but in Jamaica we call it calico, and it is just regular cotton fabric, and it comes bleached, it comes unbleached as well. So if you notice, this is a lot darker, and you know, it has more of an organic look and feel to it, and this looks a lot more processed. But these are pretty much the same thing, right? And these are super cheap. This calico fabric is super cheap at Joann's. So it just depends on the kind of look that you're going for. The deal with calico is, if you're going to do embroidery, right, you have your regular needle, you're not going to have a problem with the needle going through. Super easy, easy peasy, not a problem, because the needle has a point and the fabric has a very, very tight weave. It took me a long time to get this to work with the punch needles. So I actually used this punch needle to do this. So the deal with embroidery is it's a lot more time consuming, because you're just literally taking your time and going through the fabric, right? When you're doing punch needle, you're literally just doing this to the fabric. You're not having to worry about going in and out. You're just literally going punch, 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 punch. But what happens with the punch needle, you have to be very particular about the type of fabric that you're using. If you notice, the punch needle will leave holes in your fabric, and this is what is not going to work, because it has such a tight weave. It's not going to close up behind the loop, so it's not going to be able to secure the loop on the back. And it actually worked with when I tried it with the larger needle, but it's very uneven, and it's not going to work the way you want it to. So if you're trying to do embroidery, your calico is going to work perfectly fine. If you're going to do punch needle, it will work. I'm not saying it won't, but it's not going to be the, if you notice, look right here, right? It's all jumpy, and this is not the effect that you want. You want your stitches to be nice and clean. So save your calico for embroidery, just using a regular needle. But the deal is this: if you're going to use a punch needle, what you can ask for is weaving fabric. So if you're going to buy it online or look on Amazon, look for weaving fabric in particular. All right, but just save your calico for embroidery. Another type of fabric that's used a lot in embroidery is Aida Fabric, and this is particularly for cross stitch. So Aida Fabric comes in different counts, and you'll see it will say something like 10 count, 14 count, 20 count. What that means is how many holes it has per inch, and I think this one, if I'm not mistaken, this might be a 14 count one. Look what happened when I tried to use this punch needle in the Aida Fabric, because the weave is so tight on the Aida Fabric. If you try to put the punch needle through, look how it pretty much destroyed the embroidery floss, right? It worked a little bit here, and then by the time you got down here, because I had to be pulling through such a tight weave, it ripped the threads, right? So a lot of people think, oh, I can do the punch needle on Aida fabric and it's going to work. It's absolutely not, because look at this. This is the size 14 Amy Oxford punch needle. If you try to push it through the Aida fabric, you see how that is? And look what's going to happen. It's going to leave holes, right? If you were using the proper fabric for the punch needle, if you did this, the holes would just close up properly. Because those holes stay open, it's not going to hold the loop at the back, which is essential for the fabric when you're doing punch needle. So here's the deal. If you're using these smaller, more embroidery type punch needles, you can kind of get it to work, but it's going to cause you problems in the long run. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. And definitely Aida fabric is not going to work on these larger punch needles. This is the number 10. You see, it's literally like ripping the fabric. So Aida fabric for cross stitch, just for cross stitch. All right. And again, you could try this, but you don't want to be frustrated when you're starting like a new craft or something. You just want it to go as easy as possible. And you know what I've noticed is that I love the videos on YouTube, and YouTube is such a helpful community, but a lot of these the punch needle videos, they're not explaining what type of fabric to use, how the needles are going to respond. So it was a frustrating process for me to figure it out, and I am trying to save you the frustration. So again, save your Aida fabric for cross stitch. If you try to use it with a punch needle, that's what's gonna happen. All right, so now we have some canvas, and this is my son here, and I was doing some embroidery around his glasses, right? Embroidery will work on canvas. What I did find though is that the punch needle actually worked on the canvas, and I just decided to show you this. If you've never used one of these embroidery hoops before, and this is a super cheap one that I got on Amazon. Here's the deal though with these embroidery hoops. These hoops are not going to work for punch needle, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. So what you do is you put that part of the hoop down, you put your fabric over, and you just press, right? So you kind of tighten your fabric, you turn little screws at the top, and you are pretty much good to go, right? If you're going to do some embroidery like I have here, that's going to work. The thing with punch needle though, you see how like I can push that? The thing with punch needle is that you want your fabric to be super stiff. So these regular wooden hoops, they're not going to work with the punch needle, because you're not going to be able to get the fabric as tight as you need to for the punch needle to work. It will absolutely work for embroidery. One of the things that I realized this morning though is when I was using the canvas, I used the actual smaller needle to that. It actually held some of the punch needle stitches, and they might be a little bit hard to see, but when I pulled them out, it actually left some holes in the fabric. So canvas is not something that I would even attempt to use with the punch needle. Definitely the bigger punch needles would never work on the canvas, because all they're going to do is leave holes. The smaller ones might work, but if you have to pull the stitches out and do something over, you run the risk of, you know, leaving holes in your fabric, and you definitely don't want that. So save your canvas for embroidery needles if you want to do that, because that will work. All right. And we're going to talk about this particular hoop in a little bit, but what I found is that these plastic ones, if you notice, they have like a super tight notch, right? They're a little bit different from these ones on the wooden hoops, and I found that these plastic ones actually tend to hold the monk's cloth, which is perfect for a punch needle a little bit better. So your canvas, your Aida, and your calico, just save all of these for embroidery.